Kita dah boleh mula ya, semua panelis kita dah ada. Okay. So I think that we can start our roundtable discussion now. Okay. Okay.
Dr. Ros, mungkin kamera ke bawah sikit, Dr. Ros. Ya, terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum. Maaf, saya terputus tadi. Maaf lah ya. Guna online ni dia macam ragam sikit. Okay.
Wi-Fi tu tak stable lah.
Ya, maaf. InsyaAllah, hopefully it can be smooth at the end of this roundtable discussion lah, insyaAllah. Okay. Nauzubillah minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to all of you. It's my pleasure to be a moderator today's roundtable discussion on sustainability elements in governance and economic planning on circular economy. I am Fatin Faiza, and on behalf of UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate you taking time off your busy schedule to join us today. So we hope our engagement today will lay a practical channel for suggestion and effective element for creating sustainable futures. Before I introduce our panelists, I would like to make a couple of housekeeping announcements. So this section will be run for about 2.5 hours. So there will be no breaks in between. We will begin our welcome remarks, then panelist presentations. In each round of presentation, there will be a discussant to moderate the discussion. After we have done all of the presentation and discussion, we will open our session for Q&A from our audience, and we are hoping that roundtable discussion will be interactive as possible. If you do have questions, you are welcome to ask. Please type your question in the chatting box and we will read your question to our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this roundtable discussion, our honorable guest, Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Zamaharudin, the chairholder, UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability, Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Muhammad Sabri Takrif, the Principal Researcher, UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability, Yang Bersaha Dr. Pierre Muhammad, Manager of UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability, our invited panel speakers, Yang Bersaha Associate Professor GS Dr. Rizlawati Zainul, Associate Professor from Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Faculty of Built Environment, University of Malaya, Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Jamel, Professor from Center of Sustainability and Inclusive Development, Faculty of Economics and Management, UKM. Yang Bersaha Puan Zuaida Abdullah, the Director of Strategic Planning and Policy Advocacy Services from Malaysian Investment Development Authority, MIDA. Yang Bersaha Associate Professor Dr. Dzuljastri Abdul Razak, Associate Professor from Department of Finance, Kuliah of Economics and Management Sciences, International Islamic University, Malaysia. UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability Trust Area Leaders, participant, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the circular economy is more than just recycling. It presents a more holistic solution whereby economic growth and benefit is decoupled from the consumption of finite resources and the production of waste in the first place. The case for the transition towards a circular economy is anchored in enhanced economic value, that is, gross domestic product and employment. Ladies and gentlemen, many people around the world could die because of rising in temperatures. The circular economy is a way. Everything is reused to gain no waste. Is it possible? Will all the governments take up the challenge? Last month, COP26 in Glasgow has urged most of the leaders around the world to alarming the world that serious action should be taken to reduce greenhouse gas emission to net zero carbon emission by 2050. One idea is to move away from cycle of take, make, waste model of consumption, which is linear economy, and move to a circular economy where materials are reused, renewed, and resold. How easy will it be? Will circular economy achievable within our generations? Malaysia does not have dedicated journal on the legal framework on the circular economy, but 12 Malaysian plan has included this. Those to successfully implement circular economy, top-down and bottom-up approach is required. Those without further delay, I would like to invite Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Baharudin, Professor Dr. Azizan Baharudin, the chairholder of the UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability, to deliver the opening remark. Over to you, Professor Dato.
Okay. Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Fatin Faiza Said, Head of Cluster on Community, Resilience and Empowerment, and our moderator for today. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma shalli ala Muhammad. Yang berbahagia Profesor Engineer Dr. Muhammad Sabri Takrif, Principal Researcher, UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability, Berusaha Dr. Pia Muhammad, Manager UKM YSD, Chair for Sustainability, distinguished speakers and discussants, leaders and members of clusters under the UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone present, good morning and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Once again, on behalf of the Secretariat and the Organizing Committee of the Roundtable today on circular economy, focusing on sustainability elements in governance and economic planning, we thank you very much for allocating your precious time to be with us to speak about this topic, which Dr. Fatin has just described, something that needs to be further discussed in our country today. Before we begin, we would just like to share with you some background to our UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability. The creation of this chair was agreed upon by the University Kebangsaan Malaysia and Yayasan Saim Dabi on the Yayasan Saim Dabi Foundation on the 22nd February 2021, and it was launched by the Science, Technology and Innovation Minister on the 11th of March 2021. The Yayasan Saim Dabi presented an endowment of 15 million ringgit for the chair and 1.57 million for postgraduate scholarships. The chair aims to build on the successes of the previous UKM YSD chairs, which was for sustainable development, zero waste management, and as well as for climate change. The chair for sustainability will also focus on the direct participation of the community and society, as well as the industry, focusing specifically on sustainable development goals, SDG 1, which is zero poverty, SDG 4, which is quality education, SDG 9, industry innovation and infrastructure, SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production, as well as SDG 13, which is climate change. So these sustainability initiatives will be based on a multidisciplinary and multi-organizational approach, representing the community, industry, government agencies, and the academia. The chair will also leverage on existing and new smart partnerships with local and international collaboration for its sustainability initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, major objectives of the chair include circular solutions, which is to provide smart circular solutions for long-term industrial productivity and societal well-being. Number 2, climate change resilience, which is to address global and national priorities as well as local needs for tackling climate change towards community resilience and low carbon economy. Number 3, capacity building, which is to nurture future talents for sustainable futures by inculcating sustainability literacy, behavioral changes, and capacity building towards community resilience. 4, knowledge generation and dissemination, which is to develop and disseminate knowledge that contribute towards sustainable futures. And finally, impact assessment, which is to assess the impact of sustainable futures initiatives on economic and social transformation. So following these objectives, the research thrust areas under the chair include 1, community resilience and empowerment, sustainability literacy, climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, circular solutions, green conversion technologies, intelligent systems, as well as IoT and data analysis. So ladies and gentlemen, one of our most immediate focus areas currently is looking at smart circular solutions. So through this focus area, we would like to see, first of all, the deployment and enhancement of the developed zero waste technologies, which had been developed in the last 10 years at UKM. Secondly, the development of green conversion technologies to enhance the productivity and efficacy of the palm oil industry. And thirdly, the development of intelligent systems via Industrial Revolution 4.0 technology. So under the topic or theme of circular economy in particular, we especially hope to see the development of smart circular solutions with direct participation of stakeholders, which would enhance industry efficiency and productivity to reduce carbon footprints whilst increasing sustainable practices. So since circular economy, as Dr. Patin has mentioned just now, is quite a new concept everywhere, the chair therefore has taken this initiative to hold the roundtable discussion today so that we might begin to draw the roadmap or blueprints, if you like, by first of all learning from the expertises of our speakers today. So thank you once again for accepting our invitation, and we hope you will continue to collaborate with us in your future endeavors in this important area. Thank you so much. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And I hand you back to Dr. Fatin. Silakan.
Thank you very much, Yang Berbahagia, Professor Dr. Zamaharudin, for that wonderful remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to commence our roundtable discussion with our first finalist today. Yang Berbahagia Associate Professor GS Dr. Rusilawati Zainal. Currently, she is an Associate Professor at the Center for Sustainable Urban Planning and Real Estate Faculty of Built Environment and the Director at the Center for Civilization Dialogue, University of Malaya. She received Bachelor of Arts, Urban and Regional Arkansas from Arkansas State University in the United States. Then she obtained Master of Information Technology from University Tun Abdul Razak and PhD in Web-Based Geography from University Technology Mara. Ladies and gentlemen, without further delay, may I request our first panelist, Dr. Rusilawati Zainal, to present on efforts by community at the city level in practicing the circular economy exercise. The floor is yours, Doctor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Dr. Fatin. Faizah. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And it is a great pleasure to be here to be one of the panelists. And thank you, Dato, for inviting me into this roundtable discussion. And let me correct one fact just now. I was the director for Center for Civilizational Dialogue from 2018 to 2021. I recently hand over the directorship to Dato Azizan. Okay, so without further ado, today, I would like to share with all of you about efforts by the community. So let me share my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Okay, right. Let me do it again. Wait. Sorry. Right. Okay. I changed a little bit on the title of my presentation because I would like to highlight the efforts done at the community level in practicing the circular economy exercise. Okay, as mentioned here, I'm one of the member in the Center for Sustainable Urban Planning and Real Estate, part under the Faculty of Built Environment, and then I'm a member of the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, same faculty. Then now I become the associate member for the Center for Civilizational Dialogue. Why I highlight this? Because to me, this is another event that we have dialogues. And then I'm also the deputy head for the Center for Transportation Research. So need to highlight those things because, you know, people don't know about it. I will look forward to further collaboration later on. Okay. Next, what I want to portray today is that what is circular economy from communities' perspective, and then what's the current scenarios, and then the engagement with the communities. Okay, so the community look at circular economy. They don't know, they don't understand what is the circular economy. To them, it's about recycling. And then they never thought of being zero waste. So, you know, even a planning firm, when I mentioned about the circular economy, the principal said, is it about recycling? Keep mentioning about recycling. No, I said, circular economy is a big thing in this at the global level, meaning that we want zero waste. We do not want, recycling is one of the activities that we can do for circular economy. We can actually create innovation, transform agricultural waste into something profitable, something that usable, something that, you know, can be used by others. You know, you can actually make money from that. So after those descriptions that, you know, I tried to portray to these communities, industry player and so on, then only they understand agriculture waste can be transformed into livestock feed, and then it can also be transformed into power. You know, there's so many things that, you know, people never thought of it. So it's something that how to say, need to be the awareness need to be created among everyone. Okay, so what is the current scenarios that we are focusing now? The household, household is the primary source of municipal solid waste in Malaysia. At the moment, people talk about insufficient landfills. You know, we shouldn't be creating more landfills. You know, people keep talking about, oh, we need to create more. We need, you know, there's no place for us to throw our rubbish. Actually, we don't need that. And Datuk Maimunah, I think the Secretary General of UN Habitat, when she was the yang dipertua at Majlis Pembandaran Seberang Perai, she managed to change the mindset of the communities there into turning waste into money, into wealth, into something that, you know, beyond imagination. So we can kill two birds with one stone, meaning that we can create innovation and at the same time we can save the environment and so on. Okay, so they didn't know, I mean, mostly they didn't know that 70 to 80% of the solid waste that they throw are recyclable. Okay, so the current local authorities are trying to meet the SDG goals, the 17 SDG goals. So yeah, they should be thinking circular economy as part and parcel of methods to achieve the goals. Okay, so I would like to put forward the activities by this KRT, Rukun Tetangga, USJ 3-4, meaning that this is what they do. They have done this since early this year, if I'm not mistaken. So I am one of the residents here. I'm so proud to put forward what the initiatives that they have done. Okay, so it's a perumahan USJ 3/4. Okay, so we have 3/4A, B, C, and so on. Okay, there are 842 houses and then households. Okay, so they do this 2 weeks, once in 2 weeks. Okay, every Saturday. So we will put up our recyclable waste boxes, aluminum foil, aluminum products, and so on. So okay, all the waste, and then the current one is used oil, cooking oil. So kumpul minyak masak terpakai. Okay, so it's what do they do? They actually sell these products, this waste, and get money, and this money is used to buy solar light, okay, to place at the back lane. Okay, so yeah, they install solar lights at our back lane. So this is what we want, you know. That Dr. Fatih mentioned just now is from bottom up. Okay, but here I would like to portray something else. Okay, so this is part and parcel of the community effort. So they mentioned, they said, I mean the committee, you can sell to MBSJ, now it's Majlis Bandaraya Subang Jaya, but we don't get the money. If you give to us, we will get the money and install the solar lights, which is, you know, it gives back to the community. So that's what we look forward to. Okay, so these are the posters that they normally post in the group, so that, you know, they are very transparent, this committee. So I really, Alhamdulillah, I'm grateful to have this committee members, you know, to handle these activities. So I would like to share, this is, they give bags, so I don't think it's enough. So each bag represent the waste that we want to throw. It has to be clean first before you throw, I mean the waste. Okay, so yeah, the last, I think the latest one was last week. Okay, right, so I would like to share with you, this is the video. Okay. Right. So what are the implications to this exercise? Okay. So you know, every single person in Malaysia has a house. Am I right? So you become one of the contributors to the waste, you know, in Malaysia. Okay, at your plate, your home, and so on. So when we create this awareness, everyone is responsible to separate their waste and so on. So, you know, we can actually achieve what SDG, you know, by 2030 if everybody participate in these activities. So yeah, create awareness is one. Okay, generate income is another one. So yeah, there's a lot. Okay, there's a lot. And then we have better living condition. Everyone will look after their house, their compound, their environment, so that, you know, it looks clean, you know. And then it create innovations. Okay, innovations which nobody thought about that. Okay. And then less waste we process to on landfills. So landfills will be left with biodegradable, but biodegradable also can be transformed into something else. So there's so many things, so that we don't need landfills anymore. We don't need. Okay. So yeah, and then another one that I would like to share with you is a project by one of the industry players. It's called Me Want to Pay. Last time I used to say ME want to 12 pay no. the owner said his name is Adila. Okay, Me Want to Pay X use. Okay, so Me Want to Pay X use go digital. What does this company do is that they started at school. Actually, they collect newspapers, you know, old newspapers, or they recycle discover products from schools, you know, as you create the awareness at school level. Okay, and then this company came out with a system, an app, you know, where when the student sell newspaper, for example, or cooking oil, for example, they will be paid. But the way they are paid is through the app, and they can use the money that they receive in the app to buy food at the canteen. So, but this Me Want to Pay has gone further. Okay, so they have shops that use their application. So they become like a POS, you know, POS, whereby retailers, small retailers can use their app to actually, you know, conduct business online. So this is innovation. This is innovation to me. Okay, so the tagline that they use is "Jangan buang, dapat wang." You know, very successful, and it has gone global. It has gone into Africa. It has gone to Indonesia, and I think one more company, can't remember. Okay, so one more country. So there are 4 countries that are involved in this with the collaboration with Me Want to Pay Access. Okay, so this is what they do. Collect used oil, cooking oil, and then turn it into soap. And this soap can be used, but just wash hand, not to wash other parts. They really clean it, and there's no smell. Okay, there's no smell, and then they create candles. So another innovation, you see. So yeah, very productive. Okay, right. So what are the implications to this exercise? It create awareness among business operators, and one of the projects that we do with him, we link them, Me Want to Pay with another community, Persatuan Peniaga Kelana Jaya. And another one is another group that we managed to link, is the community in Kampung Pulau Gajah, Kota Baru. So there's so many parties that were involved in this innovative ideas and innovative exercise. Okay, so it will generate income to them. They have get better business environment like pasar malam operators, street vendors, and so on. So we need this. We need them to be aware of what they can do to you know to help save the environment, you know, to create zero waste, you know, and create innovations, and then less waste to be processed on landfills again. You see, so there's so many ways, you know, we can actually achieve zero waste. So this is what I would like to portray here, is that linkages between these 5 parties, okay, for example, the community, academician, industry, environment, and government, okay, in order for us to achieve this SDG. So it will help the, you know, let's say for example, for Subang Jaya, it will be MBSA and MBSJ, okay, Majlis Bandaraya Subang Jaya, the community in this city. Academician, we can work with many universities here, so that, there's so many, and we can create lots of innovations. The industry comes in and, you know, make it happen, okay, make it happen. And then the environment, we can save the environment. So it creates innovations, it creates a better livability, and at the same time achieve this 6 SDGs. One is economy, okay, create more jobs, okay, and then innovation, come up with new products, okay. And then we have one of the projects that I were involved in with the Kota Baru community, is that we have this biochar, okay, led by one of our colleagues in UM, and then we have a black fly soldier. So yeah, it really is very innovative. And then SDG number 11, sustainable cities and communities. And then we have responsible consumption. So people will start thinking, you know, the five R, okay, rethink, reuse, recycle, reduce, and then I can't remember the other one. And then climate change, and then partnership for goals. So this will be the partnership. So this is quintuple helix model. With that, I thank you. Sorry, Dr. Fatin, did I take a long time?
No, it's okay. All right. Thank you very much, Doctor, for a very much comprehensive and insightful presentation. So you can see that many initiative or community-based project has been conducted by Doctor with community or resident in USJ. And I believe that has given a great knowledge and awareness to that community or resident, okay, towards the how to segregate the waste, okay, and how they can recycle back all the waste and to reproduce the products. So that's very interesting. Okay, I would like to invite our discussant, okay, yang berbahagia Professor Dr. Kamisa Osman, the Trust Leader Area Leaders on Sustainability Literacy from UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability, to moderate the discussion. The floor is yours, Prof.
Excuse me, Dr. Patin, I think we have changed the discussion to Dr. Shaiful, I think.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Okay. Dr. Saiful, so you're welcome to handle the discussion.
Okay. Assalamualaikum and very good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Rosilawati, for a refreshing talk. And I believe our audience share same perspective as mine. I will try to give my view from our speaker presentation and perhaps other points that justify this session. Okay. Efforts by the community at the city's level in practicing the circular economy exercise. I believe it is always challenging to bring community taking a part in circular economy. So basically, it's easier to convince the industry because everything we can convince by rationalize their interest in dollar and cents. But on community, it will be a different level. So educating children and young adults about environmental problem is a crucial to long-term success. We have been promoting 3R. I believe we're talking about reduce, reuse, and recycle back years ago. And now we are talking about the circular economy. So this will be a different momentum when we'll talk about all this circular solution. If I remember correctly, in most of the time, the promotion of the 3Rs stay at separation of waste collection. So plastic, aluminum can, paper should be in brown, orange, blue recycle bins. But normally the awareness stop here. And normally committee always looking at what the benefit that will contribute to. So when we see the initiative from Dr. Rusarati sharing session, the new initiative shared by our speaker will be the next level of action that continue from previous initiative. So it's not just separating the waste, but they are talking about short gains and long gains that can be contributed to the community. So when talking about the recycling is for our own community, this is it actually is a good team that can contribute back to the community. Solar light project, they're making a profit from the recycling and give back to the community by providing solar lamp. This actually is a good initiative that people will see the moment they're taking action in this program or project, they will provide back to their household. So basically, this will be bring back a benefit impact. So other than that, we have cooking oil waste for upcycling product, such candle and soaps. So normally, I have a soft spot for upcycling products. So this upcycling is really much more innovative idea compared with just recycling or this thing in the mechanical recycling. But upcycling will be very useful in value adding the recycle waste or the bicycle, underutilized byproduct. So this is very interesting. So maybe when talking about the short gains, so maybe we can learn a bit from Finland government. They managed to have 90% returns of their used beverage package, so which is #1 in the world. So this is how we can learn something from them, because they have the direct redemption, the short gain. So community can see the very impactful action from the government. So basically how they did it, basically they can recycle plastic bottle, and the typical mineral bottle and any beverage bottle, they have some label on the bottle itself. So they can recycle the bottle at their trade-in machine at the front of the store. So the moment they trade in, they have a coupon, the voucher coupon that can be used directly to the store. So this is very impactful, and they managed to recycle 90% of the product that have been produced. So basically, we can see the impact of the long gains, but we cannot maybe we cannot we can emphasize the short gain as well. So this will be the interesting factors for community to taking all the program. Okay, the linkage between community, industry, governments, academician, and environment in all the initiatives proven to be more effective rather than working in silo. So we cannot work in silo. Academic for sure, they have their own research. Maybe by doing all the research, they can give some idea to the community, and maybe bring back the industry and government to work with all the project or product that can be impactful, or maybe much more sustainable approach. Okay, at the end of the day, maybe we should keep trying more initiative. Okay, I believe there are few examples that have been given by our speakers today, and I believe there are more, and maybe we should keep trying more initiatives, something like this. So what is the upcycling product that can be produced? It's not just for sure that we have quite trending how to utilize the cooking oil waste, and maybe we can look at other upcycling product as well. Okay, and hopefully it will create more public dissemination, impact and outreach springing up like mushroom after rain. So bak cendawan tumbuh selepas hujan. So I believe that's all for my part. So thank you. Maybe I will share my I will give back to the Dr. Fatin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, for very extensive discussion, Dr. Saiful. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think that next we continue to our next panelists today. Okay, so yang berbahagia Professor Dr. Jamel Osman. She is currently a professor at Faculty of Economics and Management, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Professor Jamel has served Faculty of Economics EKM for more than 20 years. He obtained Bachelor of Science from University Putra Malaysia, and he received Master and PhD from Department of Agricultural and Applied Economics from University of Georgia, Athens in the United States. Prof. Jamel has many experience during research with government, such as Economic Planning Unit, Ministry of International Trade and Industry, Malaysian Institute of Economic Research, and many others. Prof. Jamel is specialized in environment, resource, and agricultural economics and economics of sustainable development. He has published in numerous high-impact journals and produced high-impact research in national and international level. Besides supervising many doctoral students, he has a vast experience in policy making. All right, I would like to invite Professor yang berbahagia Professor Dr. Jamel to present his presentation on macroeconomic implications of a circular economy. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, my fellow panelists, distinguished participants, and the organizing committee. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah and salam sejahtera. Very good morning to everyone. I would like to express my appreciation first and foremost to the organizer, to make me to be right in front of you all today in this interesting event. Thanks for your thought to invite me. And the title of my presentation is Macroeconomic Implications of the Circular Economy. Are you seeing my slides on your screen?
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Yeah, well, the title sounds that I'll be presenting some quantitative, findings, but no, I won't be doing that. But I will just be looking at the general aspects, the broad macroeconomic aspects of the so-called circular economy. I think the term circular economy is something that has created a lot of excitement to many of us, right? And perhaps we can call it a kind of brouhaha, maybe. But is it something new, something that we have never discussed before, something has not entered our, any of our corpus knowledge, in particular the economics knowledge corpus? Well, in this particular slide, I'm saying that the circular economy is part and parcel of the sustainable development paradigm. Or I would like also to say it the other way, which is the sustainable development paradigm underlies the circular economy. So that simply means the elements of the circular economy is not new, but they are just a manifestation or rather an emphasis within the general framework of the so-called sustainable development paradigm. And on your right, on the right panel of this slide, you can see that triangle, that nice triangle, which shows the three dimensions: economy, environment, and social. These three dimensions, they are the major elements in sustainable development, where these three dimensions must be seen as equally important. No one dimension is more important than the other, unlike the decades of the 80s or 70s. But under the sustainable development paradigm, the economy, environment, and social, they are being given equal weights, equal weightage. They are of equal importance in terms of sustainable economics and well-being. And at the center there, the term sustainable economics and well-being, that is very much the final aim of what we wanted in this temporary life, right? We all want happiness, we all want, well-being, we all want sustainable economics development. And for that matter, I always enlighten my students every time, especially in our first meeting in class. I would provoke my students to look into the objective of studying economics. Is none other, the objective of the study of economics is none other but to maximize your well-being, the well-being of society, the well-being of the nation, the well-being of the public at large, and our entire planet eventually. No other aim. It's really a very noble aim of the study of economics, to maximize the well-being or the welfare of humanity at large. But unfortunately, economics is always linked with commercial activities, and that is really, a wrong conception of the nobility of the aim of the study of economics. Anyway, the economy, environment, and social must be seen equally. They must be given equal importance in terms of policies, in terms of measures, in terms of strategies and whatnot. And of course, for that matter, we require.
Prof,
yes.
can you enlarge the screen, because we cannot see the screen, full screen. I mean, like you can full screen the presentation. Oh, okay.
Are you seeing this?
Yeah, we can see the
Okay,
presentation slide now. Okay, thank you, Prof.
Okay. I was saying that the very aim of the study of economics is to maximize the well-being of society at large, or the welfare of society at large, none other. But unfortunately, the study of economics is always associated with the study of commercial activities, the study of how to maximize profits. Basically, that is the thinking that we have each time we talk about economics, where in fact, the economy must be seen as a system which links the ecology and social system as well. And look at the first triangle, the top triangle, which is the economic dimension. It is mentioned there very strongly that this came from sustainability science, or this came from mainly from the field of environmental economics as well as natural resource economics. When we talk about the economy, we must manage it in such a way that resource use must be efficient. So this means that national income shall grow, but not at the cost of our natural resource base, not at the cost of the stock of natural resources. In other words, national income must grow, but not at the expense of the stock of our natural resources. And that's from that point of view, we have the term called Hicksian income, which is the maximum income that can be generated, but not lead to depletion in the stock of natural resources. And that's difficult. But that's the very idea of what we always discuss in the basic macroeconomic theory, especially as it applies to resource and environmental economics. And now the development economics also has this very much incorporated in their curriculum. So the term SDGs, now we are talking about that, Sustainable Development Goals, is actually part and parcel of sustainable development. It used to be known as MDGs, Millennial Development Goals, way back in the 90s. And now we have the circular economy. These are just terms which actually reinforce the very importance of the idea of sustainable development. And of course, that we have many other terms like green economy as well. Okay, now are you seeing this new slide on your screen? The traditional view of economy environment interface.
Yes, Prof. You can see.
Okay, why I call this traditional? Because this kind of interlinkages between economy and environment is not something that has just been known. It has been, prevailing for so many decades, even since the 60s, even since the 70s. We have talked about it, especially in resource economics, environmental economics, in sustainability science. It simply shows the linkage between nature, the natural environment, and the economy. First, on your left-hand side, your very far left there, you have this M, the virgin inputs, which is basically the raw materials that came from the natural environment. And also some of this may be imported from elsewhere. And this M, these virgin inputs, they are used to produce the various goods in the economy. So producers, firms, government, they use these virgin inputs to produce various goods. And in the process of producing these goods, you will have leftovers, so-called production residuals. And some of these leftovers can be recycled back to be further used in the production processes. But some of them may be discharged right away to the environment as pollution, as effluents, could be many forms of discharge that you can think of. And of course, these goods are meant to be used by consumers. But along these consumption processes, it also generates leftovers or consumption residuals. And some of these residuals can be recycled back to the production processes. But much of these residuals are actually discharged into the environment in various forms. It could be solid waste, it could be water pollution, it could be air pollution, okay, all those kind of disamenities that you can think of. And the traditional view has been, trying to understand how actually we can lower the pressure on the use of these virgin inputs. So that's the idea in terms of the study of natural resource economics or environmental economics. What sort of approaches, what sort of strategies, technical as well as policies that would help us to lessen the pressure to utilize more of these virgin inputs so that there will be less pollution. So by looking at this simple material balance equation there, RPD plus RCD equal M, and RPD is just the discharge, production discharge, and RCD is the consumption discharge. That will be equal to M. That's in terms of law of thermodynamics. What comes in must be equal to what that goes out in terms of the mass, and that will be equal to G plus RP and less of these various recycling activities, production recycling as well as consumption recycling. And in order to reduce our pressure on M, I think it's very intuitive to think that we must increase this production recycling as well as consumption recycling. And of course, there are many ways to in order to lessen the burden on M, but I think it's not intuitive to think that G may be reduced, and that wouldn't be popular in terms of politics. We don't want to go for lower GDP growth, for example. That wouldn't be realistic. So we always talk about resource efficiency, we talk about technical efficiency, we talk about managing pollution, we talk about, in the end, about how to be able to produce the same level of good by using less inputs. That is in general in terms of the framework. So if you think of how this relates to the circular economy, it's very much the same thing. But you add more of the engineering stuff, more of the technical stuff into this kind of framework. And you will see that it is exactly the circular economy within this material balance framework and within also the general framework of sustainable development. Take, for example, for goods. If you go for goods which are more durable, instead of something that can be used for 5 years, it can be used for, say, 10 years or 15 years. So you can see less materials, will need to come from virgin inputs, whether our own materials or by importing them, because the goods are being made more durable, and therefore, you would require less production of such goods in order to meet the needs of the consumers, and therefore with less production and less use of material inputs. And so you can see that by prolonging the durability of the good, the lifespan of the good, which is a very strong point in the circular economy, and that is very much the engineering approach. It is very much something that fit this traditional view of economic environment interface. And let's think of second example, goods, the so-called goods which utilize secondary inputs, meaning that we use materials in order to produce the good. For example, say a PC or a laptop, a refurbished one, it requires the use of many used inputs. So that itself would also help us to lessen the burden on the use of virgin inputs, and therefore it helps improve the environment. So the circular economy is something that is very much fits this traditional view of the economy and environment interface, but with a lot more technical aspects, engineering aspect in terms of the innovation, in terms of how we can actually go for resource use efficiency. And why we call it circular? Because in the end, we want to close the gap here between these two small square thing here. Okay, we want to make it, if possible, to be a loop rather than a gap there. By reducing these discharges, production discharges or consumption discharges, this gap can actually be made more narrow. You can narrow it down. So that's why we call it circular economy. But of course, from the economic framework, you cannot have a complete loop. It's not going to be practical. We still believe, economists still believe in the idea of efficient pollution, meaning that it's okay to have pollution, but it must be within the standard, within the acceptable threshold. If you look at this particular diagram taken from this paper by McCarthy, it lists down the various key effects from the various CE, circular economy features. For example, the first box here on the middle here, closing resource loops, which is to increase product repair and remanufacture, increase material recycling. This is the prevailing idea of what's the so-called recyclables or recycling. So you can see the effects in terms of the use of virgin materials. There will be decreased demand for virgin materials. There'll be more substitution for secondary raw materials in production, and you will have an expanded secondary sector. The used goods market, like used vehicles, used gadgets, whatever used material that in the end could be further used as inputs, to be used to produce other goods. And I mentioned already about the slowing resource loop in terms of more durable products, more robust, long-lived products through innovative design. And I think many of us have been complaining about the quality of various products that we are using, like handphones. Well, we can just enjoy it for only a few years, then they start changing it in terms of the durability of it, such that it becomes less durable because, perhaps for the need for, more advanced apps or softwares. But I think in the end, it's about the product design, which is not being, intended to be able to accommodate the various advancements in terms of softwares or application. So I'm not going to dwell further on this because this is something that is already, available on the internet. Now, let us see how it looks in terms of the roadmaps or the imperative that we require if we talk about moving towards the circular economy, or rather, I would say, towards, sustainable development, where CE is just, one of the processes that will take us towards sustainable development. First thing, it's very important that Malaysia, our country, develop this sharing economy framework. I've not seen this yet. How the various government agencies, ministries would be able to share resources. Of course, resources that are, can be used to serve their mutual interests, mutual needs. Consider the universities around us. In Klang Valley, there are a number of universities. Have we been working on this, sharing various facilities, such that it would help to lessen the pressure on the use of virgin inputs, virgin materials, in the form of procuring, materials or equipment that we can actually share with others. I've not seen this yet. That would also include the various Islamic social development tools like Wakaf and Zakat. Second is environmental taxation scheme, and I've yet to see this. Much of our environmental policies have been oriented towards standards. Okay, you set standards and then you observe whether or not the public is following or is complying to the standards. You take them to court if they fail to observe the standards. But we want to see more than that. For example, carbon tax. We haven't seen it yet, although we have talked about this ever since the 7th Malaysia plan. We talked about environmental tax, but until now, we have not seen this happening. And this is very important when we talk about circular economy. Circular economy is not just about resource efficiency improvement. It's a lot more than that. I will talk more about that in a while. Third is about waste disposal tariff. The various waste, not just solid waste. Have there been any economic instruments being imposed on us each time we dispose our waste? As I say, we only pay our cukai pintu, right? And there's a portion going into that, but it's not being explicit in terms of how much we are paying each time we dispose our waste, such that you always think that, hey, it's okay, we can dispose any amount we want. But that's not the right thing when we talk about circular economy. We must understand every behavior in terms of our interaction with the environment. There is a cost to it, there's a price to it. And we must be made to understand that each time we use the environment, we must also understand the cost implication of it. Material consumption tax, again, not much of this kind of taxation dedicated towards addressing pollution and towards optimizing the use of the various virgin inputs. Differentiated value-added tax or GST. Maybe GST will make a comeback, but it will be nice to look into these. We differentiate the tax rate in order to spur the development of the circular economy. Emission trading. We haven't seen this yet, although this is a very powerful instrument in terms of environmental management. Think about the disposable permit such that we can sell the permit, we can buy and sell but yet we are able to put a cap in terms of the total amount of disposal. Targeted incentive, again, incentive directed toward spurring the CE, the circular economy. The rate of use of virgin inputs, no one knows how much, of each good that we procure, or how much of each good that any particular producer produces is using virgin inputs, because there's no labeling requirement, right? There is no kind of certification in terms of how much each good has used, virgin inputs rather than recyclable materials. Final disposal quota, no such thing yet, but this is again the new emerging idea that comes from the idea of CE. And of waste and materials recovery rules, we don't have that regulation, we don't have that rules yet. Labeling of percentage of raw material inputs, the same as number 8 there, but this is about the labeling thing. I think it would be nice, just like the halal label, if we can have such labeling in terms of the percentage of raw materials that goes into the product or into the good. Labeling of durability, recyclability, and repairability. To what extent a particular good is durable, like say 10 years or so? To what extent is recyclable? To what extent is repairable? We need such kind of criteria. And this is, I think, the challenges facing engineers as well as the, those institutions in charge of the standards like SIRIM. Certification of scheme of secondary inputs, whether or not any particular product is fit enough to be used as secondary input, and perhaps we need a certification scheme. Eco-design requirement in terms of durability, repairability, and recyclability. Again, this is the challenges facing our new engineers, and this should enter our our curriculum at universities. Green public procurement, targeted public R&D, environmental valuation, as it is my direct field. To what extent we have been able to assign monetary values on environmental goods so that policymakers can be better guided to make more informed decision when things are all being expressed in dollars and cents, like the value of clean air, the value of polluted river. If you express it in terms of dollars and cents, then policymakers, I think, will be guided more objectively to make the right decision. Extended social benefit cost analysis, again, this is a very important instrument in economics, yet it's not made significant inroads into policy making. Now we talk about Kampung Baru development. If you think about the value of natural heritage, the value of our cultural attributes in terms of traditional settlement, it may, if we really perform the right extended social benefit cost analysis, it may be more desirable for Kampung Baru to be preserved, that way, the way it is, rather than to be converted into industrial facilities or residential facilities that add to more this concrete-based environment. I don't know. But the point here is it's very important to look into this kind of measures in the context of sustainable development. And now we're talking about CE, which is very much parallel, very much reinforcing each other. And beyond GDP monetary values, beyond GDP monetary indicators, the kind of macroeconomic indicator that reflects our transition to CE, and certainly GDP is not well equipped to show us whether we are moving towards sustainable development or circular economics in this context. So we need to come up with this new measure beyond GDP. And lastly here, of course, there are a lot more, but I just have 20 here. Public and industry awareness to reduce risk-averse attitude. Because businesses, firms, companies, they are looking into this very much. They are basically risk-averse. They wouldn't want to change, just like any ordinary member of the public who is risk-averse to changes. And when they look at this, the CE, which requires the use of secondary inputs, which requires more durable goods, things like that, and they become skeptical, and they are just like us, they are risk averse, and we need a kind of campaign we need a program to raise the awareness, particularly the industry awareness, not just the public at large, to look into that CE is actually something that will lead to win-win solution. Talking about item 19, which is the beyond GDP monetary indicator in the context of CE, I'd like to share something. Look at this quote from the Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz. What he mentioned about GDP, according to him, GDP tells you nothing about sustainability. And CE, circular economy, SDG is, very much about sustainability. It's in fact about sustainability, not just very much. It is about sustainability, but GDP tells us nothing. What you measure affects what you do, right? What we do, anything that we do is always guided by what we measure. So if you measure GDP growth, then you have policies that would, be directed towards growing your GDP. So he further mentioned here, if you don't measure the right thing, you don't do the right thing. So we need to measure the right thing so that we do the right thing. Meaning that in terms of the measure for macroeconomic performance, we need to have a measure comparable to GDP, such that it would tell us whether or not we are on the path of sustainability. That's the point here. And I'd like to enlighten the audience about some of the fallacy of GDP here. I'm not saying GDP is of no use. It is very useful. It's extremely useful to measure just the size of the economy, to measure the economic value of goods and services produced by the economy. Yes, if we talk about that, GDP is the right measure, but it does not measure resource depletion. It does not measure pollution impact. It does not measure depreciation in man-made capital, depreciation in natural capital, as well as human capital themselves. So all these three types of capital are important: man-made, human capital, natural capital. But in terms of the externalities from economic processes, pollution, resource depletion, let alone in terms of socioeconomic variables, GDP failed to capture all that. But economy is the study of how we shall maximize the well-being of society. Unfortunately, we have been dependent on GDP to measure well-being, to measure welfare, where in fact GDP was not designed in the first place to measure well-being. And relate that with the very idea of the study of economy, which is to maximize well-being. So we haven't got the right measure to measure well-being. So it's kind of irony, right? So let's consider this genuine prosperity indicator, or rather genuine progress indicator, which is just one of the many beyond GDP measures that economists have came up with. This particular measure, it integrates the economic dimension, social dimension, and the ecological dimension in one single measure, just like the GDP. And interestingly, they are all being expressed in monetary value, just like GDP. They are expressed in dollars and cents, even social variables, environmental variables, like social variables, like crime rate, or the degradation of family institution, things like that. Environmental impacts like pollution, air pollution, water pollution, they are all being captured by this particular indicator simultaneously in one single measure and in money metrics. And GPI, I would say, is one of the many beyond GDP indicators that would help us to reflect whether or not we are on the path of true progress, whether or not we are on the path of transition towards the circular economy. But of course, this forum is not about this particular thing, a genuine progress indicator. Now, this is my last slide, the transition to CE, my thoughts. First, the CE, which is part and parcel of sustainable development as well as SDGs. Or in other words, I like to say that CE as well as SDGs, they are just, the major processes that what sustainable development is trying to achieve. And we shall not just talk about resource efficiency or technical efficiency. Whatever we do, whatever processes that we undertake must lead us to economics, environmental, and social benefits. This is very important. CE must take us towards this, towards benefits that encompasses economics, environment, and social, not just economics, not just ecology, not just social. And when we talk about social benefit, that includes as well equity impacts. Okay, how the rich has become richer, how the poor has become poorer in terms of wealth ownership, in terms of income disparity. Never fail to think of that in terms of policy formulation. Anytime we talk about sustainability, including CE, circular economy, the economic dimension, social dimension must never be disregarded. And my second, this middle box there says, beware of potential rebound effects, which may negate the expected benefits of CE. What is rebound effects? Rebound effect means something which is good, something that we really cherish, we really value very highly, but unfortunately, that good thing, that something eventually takes us to actually more negative effects. Take, for example, this energy efficiency. Let it be it so-called green energy like biodiesel, electric vehicles, and whatnot. Let's say we can achieve very significant improvement in terms of energy efficiency, which is good, right? It helps the environment. But eventually it may lead to rebound effects, meaning that eventually we may want to drive much more than our average distance per year, and that would actually lead to more emission. So this is rebound effect. It doesn't lead to net benefit, but rather more negative repercussions from this resource efficiency increases. So beware of that, meaning that CE is not just about resource efficiency, it's not about technical efficiency. It must also, in the end, link us towards economics, environment, and social benefits. And the last book here is economic instruments remain crucial. For example, if there is a potential rebound effects with economic instruments like material inputs, raw materials taxation, that would help us to manage these potential rebound effects. Although we may produce more good with less input, but if that input is going to be made cheap, it would lead us in the end to utilize more of such raw materials. But with appropriate economic instrument, then that's going to be mitigated. Resource efficiency, again, is the key improvement. I ran a number of simulations last night and to look into what it means in terms of our GDP, in terms of employment and so on, if we kept the use of these natural resources or rather virgin inputs. And then I add another simulation which show an increase in resource efficiency. And then indeed, only when we see resource efficiency being improved, then our GDP is not to be affected negatively when we move towards the CE. So it's very crucial that resource there exists or this particular aim, which is to improve our resource efficiency, that can really be possible. Then the CE will be, creating a lot of wonder. I think that's all, Madam Moderator. Perhaps I've encroached, the time limit, and I'm very sorry for that. Thanks so much for lending your ears.
All right, thank you very much for that very comprehensive and insightful presentation, Prof. So you can see that how the comprehensive of the circular economics in macroeconomic point of view. Okay, so we can see that the participation of all of the economic agents, such as the producers, okay, and the consumers, okay, and the government. Okay, so how the efficiency of the production from the production point of view, okay, so we should be more resource efficiency, okay, and also it should be more it's more efficient for the economics well-being. So because we know that most of the most of the current producers, okay, we can see that they are more into maximizing their profits, okay, but they have to look into the cost, okay, that might bring to the social, environmental, okay, and to ensure that the welfare of the economics has been looked into consideration. Okay, now I would like to invite our discussant, yang berusaha Associate Professor Dr. Hashim, the Trust Leader Area on Intelligent System in UKMYSD Chair for Sustainability, to moderate discussion. Thank you. You're welcome.
Assalamualaikum, everyone. I would like to thank Prof. Jamel for the very insightful talk on circular economy. Let me introduce myself. I'm Fazida. I'm actually from an electrical engineering background. So I have very little knowledge on economy actually, but I'm very interested in the topic for me because I'm consumer first, right? In the economic environment, I'm like more of a consumer, right? So for me, what I see, the economic activities are often seen as driven by profit and also competition, right, Prof? So we always wonder that if there is room for realistic sustainable economy that upholds sustainable development, right? Because we always hear this, the 3 Ps, right? People, profit, and planet, right? So, but I also heard from Jamel just now, he mentioned that actually these 3 entities are of equal importance, right? So we need to maximize people, profit, and planet. From my point of view, from my understanding, it's really difficult to actually maximize 3 things, right, at one time. Often we will see that we will, go bias on one point than another. So and also in an economy that is driven by interest rate and is dominated by that, we also wonder whether really do like all these people and planet, is it equally important in this in this framework? So but as Prof. Jamel said just now, we are often mistaken, right? We always see that economy is driven by, profit making, interest, and all that. But actually, the main point is to measure or to maximize well-being. But maybe, Professor Jamel, if you would like to comment, do you think it's realistic to actually balance all 3 people, profit, and planet in the framework for sustainable economy? If you can comment a bit on that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much. Very interesting question posed to me and Dr. Fazida. Okay, I think the answer is yes, by having the right measure. So far, we haven't got that yet. We have been using GDP as the measure of economic performance. Yes, indeed, GDP measures economic performance. GDP measures the size of the economy. How big our economy is. Has it been improving over the years? And that GDP is being used to measure that. But GDP from the very beginning, it was not designed at all to measure well-being, to measure sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, it is the sum total of the welfare of economics, social, and the ecology. And there's a way to measure that. We have a strong theoretical framework to support, the formulation of measures to reflect sustainability. And one of it is known as GPI, Genuine Progress Index, which which is intended to measure sustainable well-being. In money metric, just like the GDP, you can calculate the per capita genuine progress, the dollars and cents, just like GDP. Here in this particular measure, we incorporate the economy, social and ecology simultaneously in one single measure in money metric. So if we adopt this kind of measure, which is measuring sustainability, so that means if we want to grow, for example, we want to grow sustainability, we want to grow well-being, instead of growing GDP, like the one that we always talk about, growing GDP. Now let's think about growing well-being. Then policies, strategies, and whatnot will be, will be planned, will be formulated such that it would lead to a positive growth of our well-being. So what we measure determine what we do. That's what I was saying. It's very possible. Of course, there'll be trade-off, but this trade-off in the end will lead to net effect, which is beneficial, which is desirable to the overall economy. And that also captures as well this income distribution, disparity in wealth ownership and whatnot. And that's is a very important aspect of well-being, right? So what is actually significant if you see your GDP growing, but income disparity also grows? In the end, development or growth will not be sustainable if our people are not happy. We live in this short life for what? What is the intent? It is to see happiness. Happiness must go along, right, in our life. Not actually at the end, but it shall go along with us wherever we go until, of course, we meet our maker. So having the right measure is very crucial. We haven't got that yet.
Ah, I see. Yeah, because it's actually very interesting. It's the first time I heard GPI. It's now Genuine Prosperity Indicator, right?
I call it that way, but actually it was known as Genuine Progress Indicator.
Progress. Oh, all right. So it's actually it's not implemented yet. Is that right?
Yes, been worked on. There have been many studies, including my group, which includes Dr. Fatim as well. But in terms of policies, I was expecting that to make inroads in our RM12, but apparently it's just being mentioned very slightly.
I see. Okay, but that's very interesting to know. At least there's hope, right?
Yeah, there is always hope. There is always tomorrow.
Hope. Yeah, inshallah. And my second point that I would like to discuss is about the rebound effects just now. I found it very interesting because it's also the first time I heard about the rebound effect because, because I'm from electrical background, right? So, the thing about electric vehicles right now, right? Maybe many people are opposing and also many people are okay about electric vehicles. But I found it interesting that you mentioned about the rebound effects because I've never thought about it because what we always think, we say EV can last longer, right? Like maybe more like 10 to 20 years, the battery at least, right? But like you said just now, there is rebound effects. Like when you can use it longer, you go further.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what you mean? Right.
That's
so I found it,
yeah,
I found it very interesting because I never thought about it. When you can use something, in a long, in the longer run, in the long run, so you use it more, and it might, you might have other things that come from it, right? So I think
the end thing, the virgin inputs will get affected.
Yeah, that's right. That, and also we will be using it more, so we'll be on the road more, and maybe it will, other things can occur from it. So it's really, to me, it's kind of something that good to think about, and is a good insight from the economy point of view in terms of electric vehicle. But I would like to know also maybe one last word from you. What do you think about the electric vehicle? Do you think it has any room in the circular economy?
Yes, of course, in terms of energy, it's going to be very efficient. In terms of emission, I think that's very clear, right? The only thing that is still require some amount of raw materials. The frame, for example, requires raw materials. The battery would also require raw materials. in the short run, I think it's going to do a lot of good things. But in the very long run, once it becomes cheaper, it becomes dirt cheap where everybody can afford to, then I believe it's going to affect M in the end. So that's where the economic instrument comes into play, the various environmental taxation, so that it would actually, while it would have an effect on M in the end, but it would be somehow be mitigated. Yeah. It wouldn't be as much as it would if there were no economic instruments in place. Yeah. So that means that efficiency, energy efficiency, yes, it is very crucial, but it's not everything.
Yeah, that's right. So then you need something that needs to control it from go haywire or something like that. All right, thank you so much, Prof. Jamal.
You're welcome, Dr.
Yeah,
Fazita.
thank you. And I pass to Dr. Fatin.
All right, thank you very much for that very wonderful discussion from our discussant and panelists. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so I think that we continue to our third panelist for Roundtable Discussion today, Yang berusaha Puan Zuhaida Abdullah. She is the Director of Strategic Planning and Policy Advocacy Services, Malaysian Investment Development Authority from MIDA. She obtained Bachelor of Accountancy from University of Malaya, and she has held numerous posts in MIDA, from a chemical and life science division to ICT and electricity divisions, strategic planning and policy advocacy division to strategic technology division, and currently she involved in policy strategies and programs formulation on investment and incentive related to Promotion of Investment Act 1986 and Income Tax Act 1967 for the services sector. Ladies and gentlemen, without further delay, may request our panelists Yang berusaha Puan Zuhaida Abdullah to present her presentation on government incentive to promote sustainable environment. The floor is yours, Puan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Fatin, for your kind introduction. Okay, yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Azizan, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, first of all, thank you very much for inviting MIDA to be one of the panelists for this roundtable discussion. And I believe that this is the first time MIDA was invited. So I think this is very important platform for MIDA to brief all audience here on the role of MIDA in promoting investment, especially in sustainable environment. Okay. The title of my presentation will be Government Incentives to Promote Sustainable Environment. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes, yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay. For information, MIDA is a principal government agency to promote investment in manufacturing and services sector. So we are the first point of contact for investors who intend to set up projects in manufacturing and services sector. So actually MIDA was established in 1967. So before this we only focus on manufacturing project, but in 2011 government has mandated MIDA to also promote services sectors in Malaysia. Okay, these are the main functions of MIDA. We do promotion, FDI, domestic investment in manufacturing and selected services sector. So here I mentioned about manufacturing, so all kind of product will be, because MIDA report to MITI, Ministry of International Trade and Industry. So all the projects that we approve and we bring into the country is regulated by MITI, because we have a specific act for manufacturing activities. And for the selected services sectors, not all services are under the purview of MIDA, but some other projects that have investments elements, like hospitality, hotel projects, tourism, green energy, it will be under the purview of MIDA, because we have a specific incentive scheme to offer to investors that set up these projects in the country. Okay, and then evaluation. In MIDA, we have many industry and services division. We have E&E, we have machinery, we have metal division. So most of the investors that have this project, the project will be evaluated by the respective industry and services division. We also, for certain projects that fulfill the criteria for incentive, we can consider for tax incentive. And actually, tax incentives mean that we offer company to enjoy full tax exemption or partial tax exemption based on the activity and the benefits that they bring into the country. And we also can consider for expatriate posts, for companies that need to employ technical people, or maybe for certain projects where the foreign company is the the shareholder, so they want to protect their interest in the company, and we also consider them to be part of the companies, right? And then for the follow-up monitoring, so all the projects that we approve, we will facilitate and assist them to ensure that all the projects will be implemented without any problems. So let's say that this investor have issues related to electricity, issues with the NB, immigration, or maybe with local authority. So they can come back to MIDA and inform that they need assistance from MIDA, and then we will try to connect them and solve their problem. Okay, and then for the planning, actually I'm from planning. In MIDA, actually we have two planning division for manufacturing and services sector, and I'm from a services sector. Actually, the main role under the planning, we have to come up with certain policies and strategies based on inputs that we receive from stakeholders, from ministries, from agencies, from associations, investors. So some of the policy strategies we will recommend to the Ministry of Finance or EPU to ensure that we have a better investment environment in the country. All right. Okay, next on the slide related to NIA. Actually, National Investment Aspiration actually is a new initiative which is still ongoing under MITI. It was announced by our senior minister in April this year. So this is a new framework where all projects in the countries will be approved and subject to certain criteria that focus on ESG elements. So here we mentioned about sustainability is very important, where you can see here under this NIA, we have four parameters to enhance the nation's competitiveness and ensure that Malaysia remains a preferred investment destination. So from these 5 parameters, you can see that the elements, we want project that have R&D, produce complexity product, use technology, and then we also want the companies to create linkages with other companies. Maybe they have a vendor development program. So investors that we approve in the country will create another business opportunities to our local companies, and then create high skill jobs, and then develop new and existing clusters. This is to highlight that whatever investment that we approve will create another cluster or industry for that company. I just give example, like before this we have for solar, for solar which was approved a solar module, producer module, and then they bring in their vendor, other investors in the area, to supply their raw materials or components to this company. So by having these big projects, it will create another clusters for the project. All right, and then improve inclusivity to contribute towards the socio-economic development agenda. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is on the promoted products. Yeah, actually in MIDA we have several lists related to promoted products. What I mean by promoted product is projects that we can consider for certain facilities and incentives. So as I mentioned earlier, these projects can be considered for tax incentives, partial or full tax exemption, depends on the criteria ataupun the spillover that based on the project. So that's why for this related to sustainability, we have several qualifying qualifying activities that can be considered for tax incentive. But just to highlight that, before, when MIDA received applications related to investment project, we have a dedicated National Committee on Investments, which is responsible to deliberate and approve the projects in real time. So this National Committee on Investments comprised of senior officials from MOF, from MITI, EPU, Bank Negara, IRB. So we deliberate the projects, whether we can consider for incentive. We have to look at what are the benefits that created from this project if we approve it in the country. Yeah. All right. Okay. So for the first project that we can consider for incentives, renewable energy. You can see there. Any companies that generate electricity, steam, heat, water using RE resources like solar, biomass, biogas, mini hydro, geothermal can be considered for tax incentive. So any companies, they invest, they purchase equipment. For example, for biogas plant, biomass boiler, for example, they have to invest, put in their palm oil mill, and generate electricity for their own use in the mill. So we can give a certain tax deduction, which I will explain later, where it will help to reduce the tax payment to our government. Yeah. And then also for the energy efficiency, where company invest in energy efficient equipment, for example, energy efficient chiller, where they put this chiller in their factory, to reduce the electricity usage. So the investment also can be considered. And then same as green building, green data center, and then integrated waste management, where the company do recycling, recovery, treatment, and then they also do some composting or storage or collection of disposal. This will cover all type of waste, including e-waste. Yeah. Okay. Okay, these are the incentives that we offer for the investors. Normally, we give investment tax allowance. So let's say that the company have investment of to 10 million, to put all the equipments in their palm oil mill. I just give example on palm oil mill. So they put all these equipments, and then the 10 million investment can be used to deduct their statutory income. So later the statutory income ataupun profit tu will be reduced, and the corporate tax that the company pay, the rate of 24% ni, will be based on the income, taxable income after deducting all the capital expenditure incurred by the company. So whatever investment that within this 3 years period will be considered. Okay, of course, there will be criteria for these incentives is only for companies, because company is paying for corporate tax, and then they must also achieve all these green results. And the important thing is the technical verification by Malaysian Green Tech Corporation, because all the equipments that used in the project must be registered and verified by MGTC before they can claim for tax incentives to IRB. Okay, promoted green services. Okay, this is incentive for services company. When company want to install their equipment in their factory, for example, macam solar module. If company invest in solar module, put in their rooftop of the factory, they will apply under green project, as I mentioned earlier. But the company need to appoint service provider to install the solar module on the rooftop. So the service provider that do the installation, do the design and testing all the equipments can also be considered for a tax incentive. And this is also given to services that are related to green certifications and also EV services, as mentioned there. Okay. Next. Okay, this is the criteria for green services. For green project earlier, I mentioned about investment tax allowance because it's based on the capital expenditure incurred. Because company have to purchase, they have to invest. So whatever incentive is based on the capex. But for service provider, they don't have capex, right? So whatever services income that they derive will be considered for tax exemption for 3 years period. Okay, and then the criteria will be a company, and then they must meet the criteria of green service providers under the MGTC's guideline. They must have green policy and standard SOP, and then employ at least 5 full-time employees, which also include 2 competent personnel in green technology. So this is competent personnel is related to staff that already have certain certifications or from the MGTC or any other ministries lah. And then related to income, and also they must undertake at least 3 qualifying activities related to audit, engineering, procurement, etc. Right? Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we are not only looking at the green project and green services only, but we need to complete the ecosystem or the value chain of the industry itself, because we don't want that company that invest in green project. If they say they want to buy solar module, they have to import. We know that most of the companies that are still importing. That's why we encourage more production in the country. So these incentives is to ensure that we can complete the whole industry value chain, the ecosystem of the green technology. So companies or manufacturers that produce solar cell, solar panel, module system is also promoted to invest in the country, and they can also be considered for tax incentive. So and then storage systems, inverters, and machinery for specific industry. Processing of agricultural waste, so any type of waste from the agricultural waste. Utilization of oil palm biomass to produce high value added products such as pellets and briquettes. Recycling of waste, toxic and non-toxic waste, chemicals, and reclaimed rubber. Okay, for the incentive and criteria for manufacturing activity, is still based on the type of incentives. So in terms of level period and level incentive, it depends whether it's promoted under the general list or high-tech list, where actually companies can refer the list in our website. So the incentives that we have, we give options to companies, either pioneer status or investment tax allowance. So for the pioneer status, we can consider up to 100%, and the period will be up to 10 years. Whereas for the ITA, we consider 60 or 100%, and the period will be 5 years. And then this capex incurred will be used to offset against 70 to 100% street income. So for manufacturing activity, there will be different criteria. So that's why here we mentioned about value added. So we want companies that invest in the country, they involve high value added products So they are not only doing packing or just missing blending. So there must be high value process to ensure that the value added is achieved lah. And then the managerial, technical and supervisory index, where we want to have certain percentage for of the employees to be involved or hold the position in the company. And then local employment, at least 80%, and utilization of local waste and resources, because this is we want to encourage companies to use our local resources and local waste. So this is the main objective of the incentive, to ensure that companies utilize the local resources first rather than importing. All right, and then sometimes the National Committee and Investment also impose other conditions. But it depends on the type of incentive that we give. Okay, next, on the incentive for commercialization of R&D findings by local institutions. So here we are giving certain incentives for companies that commercialize technology or R&D findings that developed by university, the local institutions like MPOB. So if any universities or local institutions like MPOB, medical device authority, or any agencies, if they say that they come up with a technology and patent it, and they want to exploit, they want to license it out to the private sectors. Yeah, so the private sectors actually can enjoy certain incentive from the government. Actually, there is no, but for the public sector, they can get certain grants lah, from MOSTI. But actually, public institutions can use this as selling point. If they have certain technology, they can use this to promote their technology commercialization. Yeah, and then for the company that commercialize the project that developed, the technology that developed by the local institutions, by the local university, they can get 100% tax exemption for a period of 10 years. Yeah, and the commercialization should be implemented within 1 year from the date of approval. And for companies, any company that invest in the subsidiary company that commercialize the project, we also give tax deduction the equivalent to the amount of investments made in the company. So in terms of equity or cash contribution. So you can see here, I show the diagram that actually the company, the holding company or investing company must be owned at least 70% by Malaysian. And then they must also own at least 70% in the company that commercialize the R&D findings. Yeah, so to eligible for the incentives. All right, but if you don't have any investing holding company, and then the subsidiary company only can enjoy the incentive lah. Yeah, all right. And then okay, this is my last slide related to the okay. This is on IP, IP incentive. So, okay, actually this is new incentive that announced by the government in budget 2020, where we want to ensure that private sectors, exploit their IP to other companies. So these companies, the licensor, normally they will receive royalties, licensing fees from the licensee. So when they receive the income from this licensee, they will get certain tax incentive. But of course that we want to ensure that all these activities, the R&D activities is undertaken in the country, and if the company have a patent utility, it must be filed, in any IP law in any countries, and they must own the rights of the qualifying IP. So this company actually, when they want to apply for incentive, there are also other criteria where the details actually I don't put it here, but if you want to know the details, you can refer to our website, because actually this incentives is very new, and there are certain formula to calculate for the qualifying income, which I mentioned here under modified nexus approach. Yeah, because some of the companies, R&D companies, they tend to outsource their R&D activities to other companies, to other countries. So we don't want that, because under the the Forum Harmful on Tax Practices, FHTP, under the OECD, they want to have that for Malaysia. Let's say they want to incentivize any companies. We must ensure that the activities is undertaken in Malaysia to avoid that base tax erosion, or company just use Malaysia as a base to get tax incentive. Okay, I think that's all for my presentation, and thank you for your kind attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Puan Zaida, for that comprehensive presentation. So from the presentation, it has shown that many incentives have been done, okay, by MIDA, okay, through the to promote the sustainable environment, that covers from promoting a green project, okay, on renewable energy and energy efficiency, to green building and integrated waste management, and also to promoting the green services. Okay, so now I would like to invite our discussant to yang berbahagia, Professor Dr. Kamisa Osman. Okay, she is the Trust Area Leaders on Sustainability Literacy. Over to you, Prof.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much to Dr. Fatin. Yeah. All right. First of all, I would like to thank Puan Zuhaida for sharing with all of us today MIDA initiative in promoting green technology projects as well as services, yeah, in our country. I think based on the presentation, I think I could summarize that you were sharing, about circular economy. Where are we now? Yeah. So in this sense, based on the presentation, we also have clear understanding. I think for me, yeah, I think and for most of us today, understanding of MIDA's role, yeah, in facilitating and stimulating economic growth and circular economy in particular. Now, based on the presentation, we have also been exposed, yeah, as mentioned by Dr. Fatin just now, many initiatives, yeah, done by MIDA in promoting green project, which ultimately inform us MIDA's commitment, yeah, towards achieving respected targets in the Sustainable Development Goals, as repeatedly mentioned. Yeah, I think based on our first panelist, second panelist, throughout this roundtable session. So as we could see from the presentation, the emphasis on ESG elements, yeah, presented by Puan Zuhaida just now. Now, such being the case, not only arrays of green projects have been shared, but criteria that need to be met by potential stakeholders, yeah, were also emphasized in meeting the ESG element. Now, I could synthesize that, yeah, there are three main green project initiatives: energy, buildings, and integrated waste management. I think just to mention, in UKM, our effort towards sustainable campus also include, yeah, all these three important elements. Now, additionally, such effort also include green services, yeah, and hopefully in Malaysia, just like in many developed countries, I have been in Germany, yeah, for instance, they really emphasize on these green services, and we will eventually experience, yeah, green services from many sectors which offer services in our country. Now, from the presentation, we also acknowledge, yeah, the role of MIDA, yeah, in commercialization of the R&D findings by our local institution, especially higher institution. I think most of us might be very interested, yeah, on the presentation and sharing of the IP initiative, yeah, that have been shared by Puan Zaida just now. Now, in view of how significant we are, yeah, in benefiting economically versus how much we consume, yeah, at the same time, are we doing enough, yeah, to address the challenges that come along? Now, I would like to ask Puan Zuhaida, yeah, based on your experience as key person in strategic planning and policy advocacy, whether we have done enough, yeah, in providing our assistance to investors, yeah, primarily in stimulating the growth of circular economy in Malaysia. So what else do you think that need to be done? I think this is also my role at UKM as as the chairperson of social and economic transformation at UKM. So we would like to know, what else need to be done and whether we have done enough. Puan Zuhaida, maybe you could share your views on this.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for your questions. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, MIDA is the first point of contact for investors. So in MIDA, we provide end-to-end services, from the promotion until the implementation of the projects. So we want to ensure that all the companies, they are aware about what are the facilities and incentives that are offered by the government. That's why in MIDA, actually, we have done a lot of programs and initiatives to promote sustainability. Among of the programs that we have undertaken is something like webinar, seminar, briefing to the specific investors. We have done a lot for associations that related to solar, associations that related to any industries, and then we also do some of business matching program. Business matching program. So that's why in MIDA, we are not only promoting in terms of giving incentives or approve the project, but we also try to match them, investors with the funder, investors with the technology and the regulators. And other than that, we also collaborate with ministries and also agencies like Malaysia Green Tech Corporation, because when we come up with any programs or any proposals, we need to discuss with the regulator. As you know that in Malaysia, services sector it's varies. It's not like manufacturing is regulated by MITI, but for services is under the purview of respective ministry. So that's why the collaboration with the ministries are very important here. So we have done a lot of programs, but we need to do more, because now company is not looking at only incentives or facilities, but they want to have something like to ensure that they can remain in the countries. What we can what kind of assistance that we can offer them. That's why the engagement with ministries, with agencies, with investors still continue. Okay.
Okay. Thank
I hope
you.
I answer your questions.
Yeah, I think yes, thank you very much, Puan Zuhaida. And at the same time, I could see recently, MIDA has, in collaboration with Intel and Malaysian Productivity Corporation, I think, has successfully organized virtual launching of Intel AI for universities. Right? Can you share with us more on this program, and what do you have other similar initiative to at lower level, meaning that at school level? Because the initiative I could see, in Johor, for instance, you're dealing with higher institution as well. What about younger generation at secondary and primary level? Do you have some kind of initiative as well?
Yeah, that's why, because currently I don't have the details about the Intel project, but we know that actually in MIDA,
similar kind of program.
Okay, all right. So because now we are emphasizing on the productivity, productivity.
Yes,
that's why in MIDA we have certain facilities that we something like intervention fund, under industry forward program under the national policy of industry forward. So here we are assisting investors, to adopt industry forward digitalization in their operations. So we have these programs where we from time to time we have a targeted sectors where we want to encourage them to adopt this digitalization and automation program.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have time constraint. Thank you very much, Puan Zuhaida, for your enriching session. To most of us, I think I will then pass back to Dr. Fatin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor and Puan Zuaida, for the very insightful discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, now, okay. So now I present to you our last panelist for roundtable discussion today, yang berusaha Associate Professor Dr. Dzuljastri from International Islamic University Malaysia. He obtained his PhD in Islamic Banking and Finance from University Science Malaysia. Prior to joining the academia, he has served in banking industry for about 25 years, and he has published many articles in refereed and index journals. Besides examining PhD theses, he also supervised several postgraduate students, and he holds several professional memberships such as Certified Financial Planner, Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers, and Accreditation Panel member of Finance Accreditation Agency. And currently, he is the Secretary of the World Academic Islamic Management, Fellow of Center of Islamic Economic, and Executive Council member of International Council of Islamic Finance Educators. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so I present to you Dr. Dzuljastri to present on circular economy and its on ESG investment. Over to you, Doctor.
Okay, can you hear me? Boleh ya?
Ya, boleh.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, for all those accolades, which I don't think really I deserve so much for that. I would like to thank Dr. Professor Dato' Azizan for giving me this opportunity to present some of my thoughts on this topic. So, being the last speaker, I think most of the item has been mentioned, but I would like to emphasize on the ESG aspects, which is also related to the last speaker. I just go with a definition first. It's already been mentioned that circular economy actually emphasizes more on the circularity of the factor of production. Okay, therefore it eliminates the harmful effects of the economy, human health, and so on. So it saves resources and durability. And if you were to compare it side by side with the linear, is that the linear is more take and dispose kind of setup compared to circular, which reuses its facility and therefore deemed to be very more efficient, right? More efficient in its factor of production and productivity. So it's more on upscaling versus downscaling. And here you can see the project, or rather the graph we can see here is that actually it is true. We can see the C version there versus the linear, which is just up and down. So sustainability can be defined as a capacity or relatively going away from various domains of life. So essentially, it generally sort of balance up the Earth biosphere and also human civilization. And sustainability comprised of basically, has mentioned just now, three components: economy, society, and environment. And it maintains life, okay? It maintains life, more balanced. So from the Islamic perspective, you use the concept of al-mizan, which I'm going to emphasize more. But from the definition, you can see the Brundtland report states that it maintains sustainability development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability for the future generation. All right. So these are the issues we have seen as now. But we can see that if it's linear, it's very unstable. All right, because of the make design and throw kind of a setup, we have a lot of wastage. For example, I can see in the dump there, we have a lot of plastic. And for a big makan, perhaps maybe open house or Hari Raya, you can see all this rubbish have been thrown. Okay? Just thrown inside the rubbish bin without any what you call that thinking of what can we do with the matter. All right. So much so that it's become an issue with regard to SDG 12. We can see a lot of wastage, in Malaysia. Right, 15,000 tons of food waste per day. All right, and this can be avoided. Okay, there must be a way where we can think of regenerating some of these waste. And as you can see, there's a lot of opportunities also mentioned by Prof just now. Okay, so how do we tie this up together? Well, sustainability comprises of three main factors, which is the people, the planet, and the profit. Okay, this is what we say. But broadly, this is a definition given by the West. All right, this is my view of it. But how do we really see it from the Islamic perspective, which not very much mentioned earlier? So from the Islamic perspective, the concept of sustainable is in the Quran. It's very well defined in Al-Mulk. It says that if he who made the earth came for you and its slope and its provision. All right. So to strengthen our argument, our support of discussion this morning, I think we should also look at it from the Islamic perspective and the spiritual perspective. As mentioned by Al-Ghazali, okay, men are not only compelled with three things: nourishment, bread, and home and clothes. So this is part of the essential of the maqasid, which I think we should also add up, being an Islamic country, and for me, for IUM, we should champion these issues. And also I invite speakers or research from other university to really look at from the spiritual perspective, right? So it's very clear, right? The Prophet also said, there shall be no damage nor infliction of damage and essential elements. And these are also very well spelled out in the Quran, right? So I just quote some example there. For example, Al-Quran 8:53 said, there's no, so because Allah will never grace and bestow on people. All right. So this is very strong verses from the Quran and Hadith that support us to go ahead and really find out. Actually, Islam asks us to relook, okay, and to strengthen the argument just now, without only changing linear economy to circular economy can solve the problem. But actually, there's more than that. It is part of our amanah. All right, we have to do it. Allah asks us to do this. It's very well spread out in the Quran. I just pick one of those. Yeah, the first one is say that eat and drink, but waste, not by excess. He loved those who does not take waste. In Araf 31, and there's so many ayat Quran here and Hadith that support this. The last one, the Prophet say, no one should bathe in still water when he is unclean. Why are we not looking at this? And our religion is asking us to look at it. This is the point that I'm trying to say here. All right. So relationship with circularity and sustainability is that circularity contributes more to the sustainable world, but sustainability touches more on the people, planet, and economic goals. Fine, that is actually how the West define it. And we are concerned with this SDG here. There are, I think, SDG 6 here, right? Clean water, affordable, so on and so forth. But these are also not equivalent to our maqasid, all right? Well, here it is a column here that sort of make it find a close relationship between the SDG and the maqasid Sharia. As you are aware, maqasid Sharia, they have 5 elements, okay? Religion, life, intellect, prosperity, and wealth. So if you make it equivalent, you can see, for example, SDG 16 is equivalent to peace, which is life. And SDG, for example, planet, is related to at least a few SDG there, all right? So the point I'm trying to say is that we are actually getting a Western concept of sustainability, and yet when we look, you see from the Quran and the scholars, it is well in advance. Why not we look at the Quran? Why not we look at the scholars and really find out from the Islamic perspective what are the issues that we should what the issue that we should address with regard to sustainability. So to me, it just reinforces, right? It just reinforces. And from what the factors that I mentioned just now, there are 3 factors: economic, social, environment. And if we look at the real economy perspective, from the real economic, even conventional, there are different type of model. We look at zakat and sadaqah, okay, versus banking. We talk about wakaf insofar economic is concerned. And also social has mentioned just now, is our duty as a Khalifah to do and look at what we are supposed to do here, right? And the environment. So these are issues that always been mentioned, and we need to discover and do more research on this. Okay. All right. The other part that I would like to touch, since I'm also from the Department of Finance, is to look at just now this mention about ESG. All right, what's happening to ESG? All right, ESG has been a new phenomenon, and I would say that it's an opportunity that has been what you call that given to us, and the West again has right on it, and we are following the West again. All right, so ESG is something is positive side. Of course, it's managed risk. It's a very important thing, and for the capital market growth, ESG has been emphasized. Why? Because of what we have defined as now. There's lower risk, higher investment return, more resilience, and a time of crisis, okay? So this is very short, I know, but we can do more research on the methodology that has been adopted by ESG. Actually, number one, positive and negative testing screening of companies of unethical standard. Okay, just now we mentioned that now the impact, we talk about solar, we talk about green. Okay, this is one. Number two, impact investing, focus on social environment and the needs and positive impacts. Okay, and the third one is engaging on the board of directors to advise company which is more ESG. So you can see the financial market now are also changing towards ESG, adopting the sustainability. And the research that is done by this, all right? 70% of the unit trust managers agrees, ESG risk is an important factor for investment. Okay, 75% should address ESG issues regarding short-term profitability. And 49% mentioned they are willing to divest. So you see the capital market, the financial market are also falling towards circular economy and sustainability. Okay, so broadly, I have no time. I just summarize, but these are four factors which also have been mentioned. So it just sort of reinforce our understanding today. And then healthcare. All right, this is of course one of under life under Maqasid. There's issues of both health, mental health, issues of reduction of hunger. This is a very big one scope under the sustainability that we should research on. Climate change, for example. All right, we're talking about a lot of carbon dioxide emission of goals. Okay, warming and warming and electrical car. So it's now electrical car now it's become a big development in US. We have Tesla, we have even the Japanese car in Korea. They are looking to electrical car now to solve the issue of emission. Okay, green social bonds, right? Renewable energy, water, and use solar. Okay, as mentioned just now. So these are the things that actually in line with what we discussed today. And just take a look at that. A very big capital market has captured ESG. As you can see, it started with something like what, 400 million to now reaching 18.5 billion. Such a big, huge potential sustainability market on ESG based on our discussion. All right. And in Malaysia also you can see, all right, these are Malaysian companies that I pick up. So the one that I highlighted in red are actually the ESG. You can see that actually BIB, Bank Islam, ECG Sukuk Fund, and also all this. So this reinforces the importance of sustainability and ESG. So as a summary, just a short conclusion, I said that we are growing, what we call that, investment on ESG. And therefore, why? Because of the transparency and risk element. Okay. Therefore, it's a greater saving. And now people are opening their eyes, okay, into technology. And not only higher return, but also efficiency and risk resilience. Okay. So circular economy and sustainability has proven a lot of opportunities for the ESG market. But the issue here is, the way forward, right? Ensure that ESG meets its goals and objective. So with that, I conclude. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for that very insightful presentation, Doctor. And it is very interesting that you presented that how circular economy should be related to the sustainability and how through a market Sharia, okay,
Yes,
it has
yes, yes.
been the Islamic way of life, okay, for more sustainable development in economic, environmental, and social well-being. So there is a crucial role actually should be taken part as Ummah, okay, to ensure that
Yes.
use of the resources at minimum level, okay, so you should less pollute the environment, put less hazard to social well-being, and I believe it is a benefit for our future generations. Okay, Doctor, so now I would like to invite our discussant, yang berusaha Dr. Nafisa Muhammad. She is the team member of the Community Resilient and Empowerment Trust Area, UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability, to moderate the discussion. Over to you, Dr. Nafisa.
Assalamualaikum and good morning to our distinguished panelists, discussant and all participants. Thank you, Dr. Fatin Faiza, our moderator for this roundtable discussion. And my special thanks to Associate Professor Dr. Dzuljastri for raising interesting issue regarding circular economy and its effect on ESG investment. So we have to pay to get pleasure. Now we have to pay for a healthy living environment. Okay? So in the pursuit of development, we forget the responsibility to care of nature that has been bestowed on us as a caliph on this earth. So in this paper, the panelists have discussed how the transition from a linear economy to a circular economy is crucial to preventing nature as well as a society from lasting negative effects. So what is the price for this if it is continuing? We have to sacrifice the welfare and well-being of future generations. If this happens, then it means we have failed to achieve sustainable development. So thus it is important to shift from the current linear model of a take, make, waste to an economy where we reduce, reuse, recycle, which is known as the circular economic model. So in this circular economic model, the manufacturers design products to be reusable. So it is not easy to us to achieve this circular economic model because a circular economic model does not exist yet in Malaysia. Okay, we are involved in a reuse economy. Okay, why? Because we need additional raw material to reproduce the recycled product. And as discussed by our panel, okay, we can see that the circular economy model is the key to achieving sustainable development goals. Okay, out of 17 goals, 5 of them are related to a circular economy. What was interesting issue presented by the panelists was the concept of circular economics and the SDGs are very much related to the principle of Islamic economics, where the goal is to achieve the maqasid al-Sharia. Okay. So the Quran and Sunnah teach us to promote sustainable development. It may be, okay, we as the Caliph of Allah forget the command of Allah that command human beings to avoid doing mischief and wasting resources. So for me, one of the way to save our environment and nation is return to the thought of Al-Quran and As-Sunnah. And as presented by the panelists, okay, we can see related to the environmental issue. Okay, now we are aware of the importance of caring environment, and we have opened up space for ESG investment activities. So ESG, environmental, social, and governance. A simple analogy to ESG investment, investors are more likely to invest in a company that runs charitable work and loves the environment. Okay. So in the simple meaning, we can say that the societies, okay, go green. So from my point of view, the transition to circular economy and the promotion towards the ESG investment is good for the economy. Okay, because by this kind of transition, we are able to create more jobs and increase our national income, okay, through increasing investment activities. But we also need to know that the transition to a circular economy requires participation from all groups in society. Business, innovation, regulatory reforms, and lifestyle change need to go hand in hand. So all the economic agents need to take part. Okay? The producer, the consumer, and also the government. Okay, each of us have to play our roles, respective roles, to save our nation and to save our environment. So what from this presentation, Dr. Zul, I just want to ask your opinion. Do you think instead of transit from a linear economy to a circular economy, we need also to practice the Islamic economic principles to save our nations? Okay, it is lack. We lack in wisdom in many countries. Okay, although Islamic countries, it still rely heavily on conventional economics principles.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I think this is the point that I was trying to make, and I think this is, as a Muslim Islamic country, I think we should champion this issue from the Islamic perspective. In fact, this work Maqasid Sharia is really not something new. We already have a Maqasid Sharia index at the time, even at the time of Dato' Najib. Even now, I think it's so carried out. But we never see it and link it from the economic perspective or something like this. It doesn't come out towards this issue of solving this problem of sustainability. So I would personally, from the Islamic University perspective, see that we should invite all more researchers, not only UM, UKM, to really look at this from the Islamic perspective. In fact, we are initiating another SDG. We call it SDG 18. This is spiritual aspects, because we only have 17. So I am trying to get this initiative from the spiritual perspective. How does behavior, perhaps, not only our prayers, our salat and puasa and whatnot, could sort of change our attitude towards saving. I can see there's now a lot of wastage, like Hari Raya, a lot of things. But I wonder why it has to be that way. We could sort of save it or not recycle, which is very much encouraged by our Quran. Yeah, that's my response to that.
Thank you, Dr. Zul, for your very informative explanation. That's all from my side, Dr. Fatin.
All right. Thank you very much, our discussant and the panelists. And now I think that we can move to the next session for the Q&A session. I think that I need to read some of the questions from the audience that listed in the our chatting box. Okay, so maybe I can read some of the questions that are being raised by the our audience. Okay, firstly, all right, so we have a question about how could the Japanese live with zero waste? So this question from Facebook, from Cik Muhammad Shohaimi Muhammad Sharif. Okay, so I think these can be, I started with Dr. Rosilawati. Do you have any point of view? How could we have a country like Japan and Denmark, okay? So they have actually has reduced the zero waste close to reduction of the zero waste, okay, to in their everyday life. So what can you explain on this?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dr. Fatin. Okay. From my experience, you know, when I visited Japan the other day, and then, you know, I also I had conversation with the Japanese professor. So when I stayed there, I stayed at NBMB unit. So I noticed that, you know, in the unit they have this the dustbin for recycling waste. So you only, you know, if you don't follow, you'll be charged. You'll be charged. Okay. So so you have to actually know what rubbish you are throwing. Okay. It's just that they provide it in the house, the unit, the bins, and the bins are not that big, and it's very pleasant. It looks pleasant. Okay, the bin. It's a small unit, and yet they have this. They are very minimalist. I don't know. Yeah, and then my nephew also, you know, they are very minimalist. They live in a small house. And if you notice, I went to Osaka. I went to specifically Kyoto, Osaka, and I think not Nagasaki. I can't remember the other one. Okay, but what I noticed at the train station, there's no rubbish bin. There's no waste bin. You have to bring back your rubbish and throw it at home. So they train their children, the small young people, to clean up, you know, to keep rubbish and throw at home. And there's no dustbin around. You know, just imagine you can't throw rubbish at all in the train station. No. So I said, what? I couldn't find. So I need to bring it back and throw it at home, where I stay. So I think that it's a good training. You know, they teach you to separate your waste, and at the same time, there's no way for you to throw, and you have to think before you throw or before you make any rubbish. You know, that's how I feel from my experience. Okay, thank you. That's all, Dr. Fatin.
Okay, this means that we have to train our children, our future generation, right, to ensure that how they can segregate the waste. Okay, so that there will be no waste throwing to the landfill. So that would be the most important, that how we can educate our future generation, okay, for them to save the planet. Okay, for the next question from the Dr. Pierre, okay, so there is many technology development promoting sustainable circular economy, but the adaptation remains low in Malaysia. What could be the possible costs and potential solutions? So I think this might be Puan Zuaida from MIDA. I think maybe you can give some point of view on this question in terms of the investment from the companies or manufacturing companies. Puan Zuaida, are you still here?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So sorry, because I'm engaging with other things just now. So the question is about the technological development promoting sustainable circular economy. Yeah. Okay. We must understand that actually adoption of green technology in the country is still low because it's on voluntary basis. Yeah, that's why we need to offer incentive. Like compared to other countries, is mandatory. We never force companies. Yeah, you must have you must generate your own electricity from your own factory. You know, we never force them to install solar on their rooftop because everything is on voluntary basis. And even for green building also, when we approve projects from companies that want to build a factory. So when we have a factory, we never force them to, okay, you must have green building structure. Yeah, this is why in terms of awareness in the countries, we still low. But when looking at the trend of applications to MIDA in terms of investment that they submitted to MIDA, we can see the increasing trend. Yeah, if we compare from the 2016 until 2021, in terms of number of applications we receive have increased. And even for this year, we have approved about 2.4 billion investment. It's about 600 consists of 641 projects. Yeah, compared to before this is less than 100 applications. So this shows that the awareness, the level of awareness of all the investors has increased. But what we need to do is more promotion and awareness program for them lah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ponzaida. But I have some of the, because I have read some of the articles that some of the problems that arise from the developing country like Malaysia. Okay, so there are a few of the very limited of the participation of the investors from the private sector because of the high investment risk and also because of the high costs, okay, of these investment or projects. So what do you think on this?
Yeah, that's why incentive facilities that offered by government is one of the tool to attract investment. I'm not saying that okay, we give incentive, you must invest in here, but it's not. But actually, we understand that all investment will have risk. Yeah, especially in green technology, because you don't see the impact. Like what I can see that in terms of product. Yeah, if manufacturing, the outcome is the product. Yeah, in terms of green project, we don't see the impact directly, but in the long term, actually, it help to reduce the cost of doing business of the company because they can reduce the cost of operation, cost of electricity, and the cost of raw material if they do their own recycling activities. Yeah, it's true that in Malaysia, we need to assist them. Yeah. To ensure that all of them are interested, so they must make sure that okay, green is the main agenda for their companies lah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Ponzaida. Okay, now I think that the next questions from our audience, they ask about the there's a branch of the study called Industrial Ecology. It encompasses tools for environment, including to its circular economy. So what do you think of these fields? Are these applicable? So I think maybe I would, Ponzaida also, you are familiar with this industrial ecology on the circular economy?
Sorry, because I don't have technical background, maybe.
Okay.
Other panelists later to answer.
Okay, maybe Prof. Jamel, I think, Prof. Jamel. Yeah, Prof. Jamel, do you have any views on this?
Yes, I'm an economist, so I like to look at things from the systems point of view. So from that basis, from that premise, if anything, be it at the micro level, at the industrial level, or at the macro level, at the broader level within the larger economy, as long as any of the processes would lead to resource use efficiency in terms of productivity, in terms of emission rate and so on. In the context of the economy environment linkage or interface, in the end, it links to reducing the pressure on the use of virgin materials. I think it all fit within, the context of sustainability or the sustainable development notion, which includes CE. Take for example, this integrated farming, at the very micro level, at the farmer level. So because they are the ones who operate the farms, the land, and so very much a micro level kind of activity. So this integrated farming is not new. It has been around for so many decades already. This is where you have what we call as very intensified farming system, where you utilize the land in whatever possible ways, but yet it minimizes the impact on the environment, and yet it generates the maximum product, maximum output. So this is a very miniature example of CE in the context of agriculture. So in the context of industrial ecology, you have wetlands, for example, which is basically use what you call it, ponds, industrial wetlands being left by this mining operation. You can actually have a CE kind of concept, to be implemented there, and you can see how the various industrial wetlands are now being converted into many productive activities rather than being left just like that. So in the end, the long run, you would create new value-adding activities that would add to our economic development. But in the end, the basic idea is anything that we do, any processes at the very micro level or at the macro level, as long as it fits into this overall sustainability framework, then it should be supported. It should be encouraged, and in the context of education curriculum, then it should make inroads into our curriculum. Like in the case of economic education, we must not teach our students the way we were taught 20 years ago, where the emphasis was on GDP, consumption, investment, government expenditure, import, export. This is not the way to go anymore. So many things have changed. So we need to incorporate all of that in our curriculum development. So I like to see things from that kind of perspective, not just one specific industrial ecology course, but any courses must be realigned to adopt this new thinking, which is actually not new, but it's not only becoming very popular. I've been talking about this kind of thing from the mid-90s, ever since I joined UCAM already. At the time, people were very skeptical of my idea, but now people have started to see, hey, this has become, the mainstream thing. Well, that's my sharing.
Thank you very much, for Jamel, for that very insightful
Can I add?
answer. Yeah.
Can
sure.
I add a bit to?
Yeah.
I think I fully supported Prof because I think times has changed a lot. Prof, the time we study economics, to talk about import export kind of thing. It's so over. the thing is over because we very well we see that the linear economy is not to say giving, but most of the problem of what we're having today, a lot of wastage and all. So I think curriculum wise, we should also relook, study back, learn something from the COVID-19, things like this, and turn back, see where we can improve. I support Prof. It's on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, true. There should be a reform in our education system, not only in school, but also in university. Okay, so maybe for economics now, you have to take a very serious on this issue where we have to teach our students not only to maximizing or to increase our GDP, but also there's a very important issue that we have to increase our well-being. Okay, so I think that's a very, very, very good insight and point of view that we have got from this discussion. And I move towards to the next questions by I'm not sure because here we have quite many questions from the audience. Okay, so the question that mentioned that has strategic planning department of MIDA approach strategic planning department of all companies in Malaysia to incorporate circular economy elements in companies' goals, strategies, and plans? So that is question, Puan Zuraida.
Okay. not only strategic planning of MIDA, but all divisions in MIDA. Yeah, all divisions in MIDA, actually we have a same page. You know, when we promote investment, this is the concept. Yeah, and then for information, in MIDA we have a dedicated division which involved in promotion. And then approach all these companies that are involved in green technology projects. We have green technology division and circular economy division in MIDA, where this division actually is responsible. You know, they have to do all these promotion and then contact all these companies to ensure that their investment is in line with what we plan to do with the national agenda. So again, I want to say that in MIDA, it's not only strategic planning, but the whole of MIDA will involve in promoting circular economy.
Okay. All right, Puan Zaida. So I think that they could get the answer from Puan Zaida. And now I think for I'm going to ask to Dr. Dzuljastri, okay, about the because we are talking about how to achieve the SDG through Maqasid Syariah and so on. Okay, so we have also because we have been looking at the some of the previous study also has mentioned about they have segregated several reasons why there will be no less participation in the private sectors, okay, such as no effective environment legislation, for example, okay, and also because of the renewable energy, as I mentioned, that is quite highly cost, okay, so they are not always attractive to the private sector. What do you think on this, on the financing channel, on the part of the financing channel of the Malaysia, in Malaysia?
I think thank you. I think I know what you're trying to say, but from the Maqasid perspective, it's also related to sustainability, right? So is ESG very much of a sustainability, what we call it, financial decision on capital market. For example, now when they talk about solar, okay, solar is installing of solar in school, in the government, and it's not a very cheap thing. It costs about billions of investment, is it? But what seems to be to me that not very certain is actually what is the, are we really meeting the objective of what we want to do to save life, you know, sustainable kind of thing. Because I'm not saying anything about the bankers, but sometimes the idea of profit making is still there. You know what I mean? So you have to be very clear actually, are we, if you change something and finance something, are we really meeting the Maqasid, if I mentioned just now, okay? The five principles: religion, life, intellect, posterity, and wealth. Because it's a very big investment, and actually just now there are three criteria that use: impact, investment, and they look at the what they call it, that particular project is ethical. That has been evolving, you know. We talk about green sukuk, we talk about everything which meeting the Maqasid perspective and all those. But we have to also see the fact of when you give that kind of financing, will that meet the purpose? This is my, I'm not saying my doubt lah. This is something, the research that we have to do. But I would, to answer it in another way, I said we should look at the real Islamic finance. I mentioned very briefly just now, like wakaf, zakat, sadaqah, and all those. Those are actually really benefiting the poor. You know, like sadaqah, zakat. You know, only 5 ashraf can get that, and also wakaf. Now we talk about Islamic crowdfunding and all those. So that's my response to that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dzuljastri. Okay, I've been thinking about that because we are talking about that we're trying to reduce on the waste. Okay, try to, there's no waste for the environment. Okay, so for the our life. So that people are suggesting that maybe we have read some of the article, they suggesting that we shouldn't own a car, and also we shouldn't own electronic, for example, and we shouldn't own a television, because by renting them, it allows us to upgrade, and from them to have a second use to rent it up to other people. So at this moment, we are very much as a consumer society, okay, where we encourage to get a new phone and throwing the old phones away, and then upgrade the new television and throwing the old away. So that how that this reuse and reproduce rather than recycling is crucially important, not only for the consumers but also for producers, right? So how much that Malaysian government, how they have set a certain level of the regulation or standard this as a new business model to our manufacturers, because I have been seeing that as a consumer society, we are looking for a new brands, products and goods by throwing the old ones. So how can you know about this? Maybe Dr. Zzuljastri or Prof Jamel, you might respond on this.
I think Puan Zaida mentioned that very well just now, that MIDA has a lot of incentive on green investment. So that kind of create awareness or willingness of big companies to invest in green projects. And I mean, this is a good incentive for them, save tax, but more is more than that actually. It's just, to me, it's just a knowledge of it. I think I'm not sure we have sufficient knowledge of understanding of how the benefit of this recycling and sustainable is still quite low, I think, in terms of this is my view. Maybe Prof can add, Prof.
Yeah, Prof Jamel, do you have any point of view?
Well, it's such a broad area, a very broad topic actually. But my thinking for this particular activity, for this particular question is simply about the importance of awareness raising, the importance of education program, not only for the general public, but also the industry as well. Take, for example, buying a refurbished gadget, refurbished, say, laptop. Do every consumer actually like it, although the price may be attractive? But, you don't feel that you are getting a new one, right? You don't feel that way. You still prefer perhaps, purchasing a brand new laptop. So that kind of conception, that kind of attitude must be, realigned with the development, with the emerging development. We need to appreciate that not only we would have a gadget, but also we are contributing to the environment. We are contributing to social causes as well. So that is going to be difficult for the general consumer, and let alone to the industries, to the businesses, to the firms, whether or not those CE thing would actually improve profit, by seeing new alliances, new networks, whether or not the returns on investment will be better, what happened to their old partners, things like that, because CE means a reset. It may not be done immediately, but it must be done gradually. If not, and then people will just move away, will just shy out from the CE thing, because it affects a lot of things, not only this structural kind of relationship, but in the end, it's about whether or not firms are getting what they wanted. Basically, profit motivation is very important. So it's going to be a gradual process. Both the general public as well as the industries themselves, they need to be ready. They need to be prepared to move on with these new thoughts, new elements in doing business, including policymakers. We can expect to have a lean government, for example.
Yeah.
That is consistent with the notion of resource efficiency, which includes human capital. So it's a big thing, yeah. It's a very broad thing. We may want to venture into many more forum like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
This may be a good start. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Consumerism is something really profit making. There's no two way about it. You know, if you go for making money, you make money. But only thing, like for example, like now there's more growth on organic, organic materials. Even now we talk about ayam kampung and kind of thing, more organic. But the problem is that the demand is not so much. So organic materials tend to be higher than the less organic one. So
yes, very much.
That's the big issue we are facing.
If producers are not getting any premium for the price that for the good they are producing, they wouldn't go into it. Yeah. So whether or not consumers are really willing to pay a premium for organic food, for organic products, for CE friendly goods, we don't know. But it's a new ball game. It needs a resetting of our attitude. Yeah.
But if there is demand, coming to what Prof said just now, and I also believe if there is enough demand, people are saying, now we're talking about halal toiban, this is a new concept that we use. The goods not only must be halal, but it must be toib. Toib, they say it must be pure. So we're talking about chicken. Let's say we have the normal chicken, we have injection chicken, kind of thing we call it, compared to the kampung chicken or wala, for example. But if there's more demand, people for organic things, for ayam kampung, why not? That is a very good thing, There's more efficiency, more demand, then they can produce more. We have to go to that kind of thinking. It's changing, It's not easy, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, correct. Okay. Puan Zaida, I have one question regarding do we have the percentage, right? How much is the percentage of the investment on the green investment has been taken by the manufacturer or investor in Malaysia? Would they take the participation in investment for the green technologies? Because we have been talking about try to reduce CO2, okay, to achieve the energy efficiency and so on. Okay, so how much is the percentage as compared to the a common conventional investment, the whole country?
Okay, actually, if we look at the investments as a whole, most of the big projects come from M&E, E&E projects, machinery projects, chemical projects. Yeah, when we look at the in terms of breakdown, green investment is not so big. The contribution is not so much because you know that investment for green projects for own use, the amount of investment is very small. Yeah. Imagine that company that invests, 60% of the application that we receive is investment for their own use. Yeah. So meaning that the capacity for production of electricity is very small. So investment in the solar module, for example, the amount of investment is about 1 or 2 million, depends on the capacity of the city generation. But when we look at the investment like large scale solar, solar farm, that one contribute to big investment. But in total, actually the amount of investment is not as big as other investment that involve in chemical project and E&E projects, because this is not on what we call we look at this spillover, like for the E&E, we want something like job creation, vendor development program. But for the green, because we have national agenda, we want to reduce CO2, reduce greenhouse gases. So we want to achieve certain target for renewable energy by 2025. So that's why even for the investments, kalau 100,000 investment in the equipment pun we still accept. Yeah. So that's why in terms of number of project is big, but in terms of contribution, investment value is too small.
Is there any any initiative that, I mean, like not initiative that, because we can see that the amount is still low. So what could be the solution that for the government to increase further for the investment on this?
No, that's why I mentioned just now, we don't look at the value of investment when we talk about green. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
green
don't look at
investment,
the amount of money. We look at the number of companies that adopt green, adopt the
Okay.
sustainability
Yeah.
initiative. So if the number increase, meaning that is a success for the country lah, because we managed to convince investors, you know, okay, green is the solution for your future. So don't look at the number amount of investment, because for other projects, yes, for manufacturing, we want big investment because it will create spillover to the economy in terms of job creation, in terms of vendor, a number of business opportunities given to our local service providers. But for green, we don't have that kind of criteria, yeah, because what we want them to do is you invest here and then you achieve certain green result, and then is considered as you already meet certain criteria. So that's why there is no certain target or certain because all the activities, the promotion activities is guided by the national agenda under the regulator, the ministry itself. So let's say that okay, we want to achieve renewable energy, let's say that of 40%, for example, 31%, yeah, by 2025. So we have to look at the what is the achievement now. So we do we want to have let's say that we want to have the big impact. So government has to introduce certain scheme like large scale solar now, because large scale solar, the impact is big. Yeah, because the capacity in terms of RE install, electricity generated, contributed to the grid is bigger compared to the company that produce for their own. So it's still back to the regulator, yeah, CASA. So if they introduce certain scheme that can encourage big investments, then that will be good lah for MIDA, and then we can attract more investment to participate in these projects. Yeah.
Right, thank you very much, Puan Zaida. So I think that was very wonderful discussion today, which is I learned a lot. Okay, so I think before I end the discussion, so I would like to ask each of the panelists to provide a 1-minute summary to conclude your point of view, your thoughts, and what you want other people to remember to the discussion. So maybe we can start with Prof. Jamel.
Yeah, I think given the developments all these years with various names, various terms, although it actually points to the same thing. I mean, the context of CE is all about the importance of sustainable development, which in the end call for all of us, you know, to undertake, you know, the kind of part that should not be very far from the natural equilibrium endowed by our creator. Natural equilibrium, I call it. We should not be very far from that. As long as we are aware about this, and we have got the right measure, and I believe with the right measure, then all others will just follow nicely. And GDP is not going to be the right measure if we talk about sustainable development. It's about growth only, yes. So again, it's about beyond GDP measure that will guide us. And what are the elements? It depends on our belief, it depends on our culture, whatever. But in the end, there are a lot of common terms between us. So whatever culture, whatever religion, those common terms prevail and will bind all of us together for a new habitat for mankind. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for that very wonderful closing. Okay, maybe Dr. Rusilawati. So, do you have any point of view or that you want to say here?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Fatin. So I agree with Prof. Jamal and the other panelists. I believe that, you know, we should, every single person on earth should respect the environment, should respect whatever we do, we are damaging the world. So we need to educate our society. We need to educate our children, you know, to appreciate all this whatever we produce, because yeah, we need to train them, you know, to see any ways to be treated well, and it can come out and produce in another form. So the transformation of waste into wealth is very important. They have to understand. I mean, we need to teach our younger generations on the importance of having this zero waste. Some of the comments that I read in the chat room, yeah, when we were young, we never thought of, you know, about circular economy. No mention about CE. CE is new to many of us, you know, to many firms. They didn't know what circular economy. They thought it's recycle. No, it's not about recycle. It's more than recycle. So it's about zero waste. So when we do things without realizing it, some of us, but we actually practice CE, you know, when we were young, but we didn't realize it. The term was coined later on. So I think we need to embed this into our children, so that, you know, in the future they will practice CE. Thank you. That's all from me.
All right, thank you, Puan, Dr. Ruslawati. Okay, how about Puan Zuaida?
Okay, given the development agenda, actually is very important for MIDA to attract investments that can contribute and support Malaysia's commitment, as stipulated in the SDG 2030, SPV 2030, Malaysia plans and national investment aspirations. So with these parameters as a guide, MIDA actually will continue to focus on attracting and facilitating sustainable investment projects into Malaysia, so to ensure that it's inclusive and sustain impact to the country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Dr. Dzuljastri?
Yeah, I would like to echo all the panel's suggestion. But in particular, since we talk about the Islamic perspective, I think this need to be strengthened, you know, because even the Quran says, even the Hadith, has always mentioned us to be very thrifty, all right? And we are the vice-current for Allah SWT to ensure that resources are managed properly. So as it is now, if you see, you know, even sorry to say, before the circular concept come, we accept the linear economy as 100% profit share, 100% profit, and there's no other model until we have. But even circular economy is a Western concept. All right, they see something which is good and they tie it up. But how about for us? You know, can we come up with our own perception, our thinking, our own way of looking at for saving? You know, can we do that? No? Well, why not we look back at our books of Quran and Hadith and find the real motivation, you know, of how we should go about and impart that to our children. Yeah, this is my view, lah.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Zachary, that the end of the point of view from our panelists. So I think with that, we already now at 12:38, okay, at my time. So maybe we close our discussion for today. Okay, so I would like to thank all of you again, all the panelists for providing your interesting and insightful point of view. So I also would like to thank the organizer, UKM YSD Chair for Sustainability, especially our chairholder, Professor Dr. Azizan, principal researchers, Professor Dr. Muhammad Sabri, and also to all discussants, okay, all the trust area leaders and the organizing team, Dr. Pierre, Sukma, and many others who made this roundtable possible. So I also would like to thank all of you, the audience listening to this, who contributing the questions. So I hope that you had fruitful during the very last hour. So I think with that, I close a discussion and wish all of you a great day. And I think that I would have to one of my last key takeaways. Please don't waste the waste and take less from nature and protect lands, animals, ecosystem that help provided with clean air. So as we just said, that circular economy is not just finding ways to remanufacturing or recycle goods, make them last longer, but it's about the way, buy, use, throwing away mentality that we become into attached to. So is it possible reducing carbon dioxide to zero? Probably on this. And one last but not least, one verse from the Al-Quran on the Surah Al-Araf, ayah 66, that saying that do not mischief on the earth after it has been set in order. Supplicate him in fear and hope. Surely the mercy of Allah is close to those who are good in their deeds. So with that, thank you very much and have a wonderful day. All the best come from me and the goods from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With that, I end. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay,
Okay, thank you. Maybe we can have a photo session first.
Yes, yeah, sure. We could have for the session.
Terima kasih semua. Thank you so much.
Luckily, I'm still around for this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prof.
Ni je ke? Tak ada gambar lain lagi?
Okay, we give 10 seconds to all standby. Okay, ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile.
Tapi how about the discussants, Dr. Pia? Can we invite the discussants as well?
The discussants not here. We do have.
Semua orang.
Semua ada ya. Semua, maybe you can buka kamera semua yang ada, so that we can have a photo session now.
Okay, once again.
All the wonderful discussants, please.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, once again, freestyle. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
All right.
So,
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for very wonderful discussion.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ya, next time kita belanja minum teh.
Ingat tu Datuk
Ingat, insyaAllah.
Jumpa lagi ya dengan serik. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.